A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to some more of TV shows that deserve the spotlight. And what I got to offer here is something a bit more special and somewhat on the darker side of TV. This is basically an animated series that came out during the late 90s that was based on Todd McFarlane's Spawn. Spawn the series, basically as this one is simply known as, is a series that ran from 97 to 99 and basically consisted of this many episodes. And as I've said before, Spawn is a product of Todd McFarlane, or more specifically, Image Comics. This was basically the composition of several different artists and comic designers from the likes of DC and Marvel, who basically came together to create an all-new competitor towards the likes of these other comic book companies. Image has had a pretty amazing catalog though, as opposed to what Marvel and DC have had to offer. While they themselves might have some mixed reactions nowadays, the reactions that we have from Image Comics, especially when you basically piece together certain franchises like The Walking Dead, which itself, as we know, got turned into a hit TV show, and even a popular Telltale video game series. That alone was beyond insane in terms of what it could do to create a zombie apocalypse for a new generation of viewers. But in terms of what Spawn has had to offer, McFarlane himself, which is certainly not related to Seth MacFarlane, if that already wasn't obvious enough, he's definitely managed to make Spawn one of the most powerful and enticing demon-like heroes of all time. Though many consider him more of an anti-hero, which would at least make more sense. The story of Spawn goes something like this. Once upon a time, an officer known by the name of Al Simmons was out through an investigation when his superiors decided to pull the plug and pull off a two-faced gig on him, resulting in his death. He would visit the underworld, known as Hell, and would eventually create an agreement with the famous Demon King, known as Malebolgia. He would lead off his army of Spawn demons, and in exchange, he would have one last chance to make amends with his wife. His wife, known by the name of Wanda, ended up becoming widowed upon his death. And he's not only felt sorry for the whole ordeal, but wants to make amends before finally kicking the bucket for good. But unfortunately though, Malebolgia had his own two-faced gig. He sends him back to the realm of the living, of course, but 5 years after his death. And on top of all that, Simmons is now a walking corpse, or zombie. Though I guess in this case he's not necessarily known as a zombie, since while he has that sort of rotting look to him, he's not exactly moaning or walking in a weird decomposing matter due to rigor mortis having set in. And you know what? That itself was an impressive narrative that not only got turned off into a successful TV show, but there was also a movie starring Michael Jai White, Martin Sheen, and even featuring John Leguizamo, the same man who was in the original Super Mario Bros. Movie, as well as in Playing with Fire, a movie that I actually talked about last year in Films I Should Have Talked About Years Ago, Season 2. You could find that in the playlist or even a link down below. So, of course, what I got to say about the show itself, it's unbelievable. Like I said, it's super dark and super gritty. I mean, if you thought that the likes of certain shows out there, or franchises of any sorts, like Batman, if you thought that was amazing for what it was, I certainly would suggest that you'd go and see Spawn, before you start coming around at me demanding that I talk more about those shows. Because I'll tell you what, across 3 seasons and across a unique cast for this show, especially Keith David. Oh man, he's basically the true voice of Spawn. And it was impressive to see him come back to voice Spawn in Mortal Kombat 11, mostly as a paid DLC that you can optionally pick up, unless you don't want to play as Spawn. But you know what? David was more or less the true voice for Spawn back then, in the same way that Woody's true voice was Tom Hanks, and of course, who could forget Thomas the Tank Engine, voiced by George Carlin. Oh boy. I could go all up in the air on this kind of stuff. But in terms of Spawn, every episode has its own jam-packed session, complete with loads of adventure, lots of action, a ton of violence, unique animation styling, and so much more to offer. This is certainly one for the ages that I feel like will never go away. And being that I actually have the show itself, it really does show. I really am more than just a Spawn lover. And I really do hope that there comes a reboot. Whether it's a new show or even a new film, I'm all for it. But hopefully, unlike other things that have happened, I hope that Spawn does get adapted more correctively, and not so much as just some weird liberation of a project. I mean, there's been tons of things I've talked about in regards to this stuff. So, again, I hope Spawn gets treated well, in the same way that we've seen Gran Turismo treated well, Uncharted treated very well, and of course we can't forget about how amazing it was to get to see, wow, the iconic remake of, oh jeez, wow. The Iron Giant wasn't necessarily a remake, more or less just a recreation almost 20 years later in Ready Player One. Oh boy. So again, lots of things are up in the air, but Spawn, the show, is amazing. Nothing more to say on that part. I will be back with some more shows and potentially more movies as they come around. So make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side if you'd like to see more.